There are loads of forum posts, YouTube comments, and even players complaining in-game that they are having threat problems as a warlock tank, or DPS players are not happy to their warlock tank's aggro. I have experience in warlock tanking in multiple raids, dungeon, group, and solo content, and in this video I'm giving my learnings to you fellow warlock players to perform better and to get some ideas to confront different types of scenarios as a warlock tank. First of all, at lower levels, all players can take a hit or a bunch to themselves without a problem. And for example, warriors are more than willing to take some more damage to get some more rage. So, as you tank, you really don't need to sweat about one mob out of 5 is on the loose and not tanked by you. Also, your group comp and DPS playstyle will have an effect how well you can keep aggro. If you have 4 or more mobs pulled and all your DPS will go all to different targets, it sure can be an impossible job to keep all attacking you. But if your party will give you even 1 second to do things before going all out, it will make a great difference in the end. Keep in mind that as a tank, you are the group's pace setter, and you should use it to your advantage in dungeon and even in raid environments. If you utilize your spell range and toss in dots and searing pain from a distance, and your playstyle is kinda always a step ahead the rest of your group, I'm sure you have the initial aggro. What comes to other classes and how hard it is to keep a good threat lead against them, there are a few that shine above others. To mention a few, Shaman with their Threat Machine toolkit are surely a challenge. Warriors with full rage will pump a lot, and Hunters or Druids can burst some. So if these classes really want to go zug-zug in multiple mob packs, they will get aggro sometimes. At least casters are slower at threat generating in general, and I haven't had any problems with them. Heck, Mage Living Bombing all targets ensures they die anyway in a split second. There are a few things about threat that I need to point out here. The points of threat are calculated by damage, healing, and active abilities or items. All these have different modifiers, but the short answer is that 1 point of damage equals to 1 point of threat. Healing has a 50% reduction per point healed and is divided to the NPCs that you are combat with. Passive mana or HP gains do not accumulate threat. Different abilities have different modifiers. You can check the details in Wowhead. Probably the most important ability that tanks have is Taunt. Taunting will get your threat level equal to the highest player on the threat table and make the mob target you. Remember, other players can exceed your threat quickly if you do nothing after this. The percentages to over aggro are 110% for melee and 130 for ranged. Over aggro doesn't depend on damage type, only the distance to the NPC matters, so if you are a ranged player at 120% of threat and run into melee, you will get aggro instantly. Tanks also need to remember this, since they should not drag the mob packs straight through your ranged group for no reason. What comes to warlocks and threat generating, Searing Pain is your biggest ability, at least in phase 1. Searing Pain has a threat modifier of 200% per damage done, exactly like Shaman Earthshock has. Your tanking spec, aka Metamorphosis rune, gives you 50% more threat, which equals a 300% threat gain per damage done with Searing Pain totally. What comes to Searing Pain versus Corruption threat generating at level 25, Corruption makes more damage per global with 0 spell power. I haven't calculated how spell damage changes the equation. Now if Searing Pain crits, the threat generated is almost the same as Corruption's. Corruption though is a slow 18-second threat generator, while Searing Pain is instant. So Corruption is only worth if the mob lives more than about 10 seconds threat-wise. Other Warlock important abilities like Life Tap doesn't generate threat at all, and Drain Life only builds strength the amount it makes damage. The healing it does doesn't do a thing here. Next, let's talk about different NPC scenarios you will face as a tank. All the cast orders I'm about to show you here work pretty much the same regardless of your talents. Some runes of course may alter some things, for example if you don't use Master Channeler, you probably won't use Drain Life either. First, let's start with the easiest, Single Target. Single Target we're going to divide into 2 categories, mobs with low HP and mobs with high HP or bosses. Mobs with low HP are pretty simple. Just toss in a few Searing Pains without any dots and the mob will die before the threat comes an issue. If you wanna min-max your DPS, use Incinerate in the beginning, but this will also slow you down a bit. High HP mobs or bosses are a different thing though. If possible, meaning that you have the time and can do the pulling, start with Incinerate, Immolate, Searing Pain combo. It will ensure you a good threat lead. Then add Drain Life, Corruption, and Agony in that order. If you don't have the time to do the pulling combo, meaning like someone pulled or a mob runs to your group mid-pull, just Searing Pain spam your way in and then do Drain Life plus dots to the target. What comes to rest of the fight, keep your dots up, life tap so that you have good dots uptime and good mana situation before casting Incinerate again and going full Searing Pain spam. Immolate is kinda optional at this point, but probably worth it if you can cast it freely, for example if a boss mob is casting something and not hitting you physical. I did some in-game research to accumulate threat in the pool and they are shown here side by side. I have a decent gear and a bit more fire damage than Shadow, but I don't think that matters too much. The experiment shows that you can have good threat at the start with all these variations. Using the fire spell combo will have an advantage that it keeps getting higher threat past the point the mob here dies. 2 or more targets with high HP are almost like single target at the start. Just do your Incinerate, Immolate and Searing Pain combo to the main target. Then switch to second, Searing Pain it 1 to 2 times and Drain Life it. Switch to third target and here have an option to just taunt it to you or try to grab it with Searing Pains. I personally like this style where you ensure you aggro with 2 targets and then grab third with a taunt and start building threat on it or to the fourth target. The rest of the fight is pretty much ensuring that targets have high enough threat, and when you are sure they won't go away in one global, you can toss in a corruption to a few mobs. Remember to reapply Drain Life if needed. The next noteworthy situation is that when you have 3 targets or more with low HP. This is the only situation I would consider using Shadow Cleave even once. It does about the same damage per global as Searing Pain, but lower amount of total threat since it has no added threat modifier other than the 50% from meta. But that really won't probably matter in low HP targets because they die fast whatever you do. You can also just pick up some of the mobs with Searing Pain to mitigate some damage or let your DPS handle them like Mage, Frost Nova, or the last one, you can just Rain of Fire them, and if you're spec'd with Lake of Fire, it will make your AoE damage shine. In later phases, this will probably be some sort of metagame to Rain of Fire to get Lake of Fire rune buff up, and then just Hellfire spam and let your healer heal the nuts out of you. You can also utilize Engineering Grenades or Dynamite in AoE packs, and these surely make a lot of damage and threat with just one simple cast or global. In the end, with low HP mobs the result is always pretty much the same, the mob's dead, and everyone alive unless it has been a shit show before the pull. Anyway, with multiple low HP mobs, just forget dots and Drain Life, they won't have the time to do enough damage. If there's a 1 higher HP mob, you can of course Drain Life it. Lastly, let's go through some tips that will make you a better warlock tank. Try to use life tap as much as it is safe, since it will make you pull the next group faster and get you that initial aggro. And you can do your abilities without the risk of going out of mana in early fight. Another thing is that even though your metamorphosis rune gives you charge, avoid using it usually, since it will just make you take damage faster and your melee hits are all in all quite insignificant. If you do use charge, spam the next ability on the way your character is charging like this. You don't have to wait charge animation to end. Remember, as a warlock tank you can do pretty much everything from range, and that should be utilized in at least some boss fights. Usually tanks are used to run into melee, and I also have the habit for it, but as a warlock you should shake things up a bit. At this state, phase 1, other curses than Agony seem like not worth it. Maybe Curse of Recklessness on bosses if your raid has high amount of physical DPS. Otherwise, don't bother other curses than Agony in raids or dungeons. One thing is that when you have good enough healers and your gear is getting better, I'm sure we can ditch Master General Rune for some more damage, and I'm sure we are starting to see some rune and talent variation in dungeon or in raid content pretty soon. Lastly, do a start attack macro. I recommend you combine it with Searing Pain. It's a small thing, but at least with faster weapons you can get a melee hit in here or there between globals and casts. Well, hope you got some ideas to your tanking. I am not telling this guide will make you keep aggro in all situations, and as I said in the beginning, it all depends a lot on your group playstyle and frankly yours too. Go check Wowhead Classic Threat Guide if you're interested in different ability threat modifiers. There are loads of warlock tank guides all over internet and YouTube, but I can really recommend one. Creeks made a great overall Warlock tank guide a couple days ago, go check that out. Okay, one more thing, please don't run away yet. I'm fairly new on YouTube, and so do me a favor and click the like button, and if you'd like to see more WoW classic content, hit the sub button right here. See you again next time, peace!